Howdy, folks. Anthony Dream Johnson here today, founder of 21 Studios and the 21 Convention. Today with a special edition of 21 Live, interviewing one of our new speakers this year for the 21 Convention coming up in Orlando, Florida, this October 11th to the 14th. Tickets at the21convention.org, that's .org. So I have with me Richard Grannon, Spartan Life Coach, big-time YouTuber. He's about 90,000 subscribers, I believe.
It's just over now. Yep.
Congrats, man. That's awesome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Hell yeah. I've been waiting, like we talked about, before we went live here, we've been waiting to talk to each other for a while. And I really love your work, man. I think you have one of the best channels on YouTube that's focused on like psychology, practical psychology, things people need to know.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And I'll say too, for the guys watching that don't know your work yet, Richard's content on YouTube and some of the books he's recommended have been helpful in healing from my relationship experience a couple of years ago that you guys probably know about, the marrying Medusa thing you guys see on YouTube. So Richard's got great work and great insight. And like I was telling him too, it's entertaining. It's not just like this dry, like academic stuff. It's like useful and easy to understand. So Richard, thanks for coming on, man. Super appreciate it.
No problem at all. The analogy I try and give is I try and be that interesting guy in the pub that you might meet and you think, oh, I'm just going to chat to this guy about nothing. And then he actually says something useful. Every once in a while, I try and say something, something of use every once in a while just to keep people going.
And so you normally live in Britain, but you're joining us live from Thailand right now, right?
That's right. I'm usually based in, well, I travel around a lot, but most recently I was based in the UK. And I came to Thailand to, I like doing Muay Thai. I've been doing Muay Thai since I was a kid. Get some sun, and I was supposed to be on a working holiday. But I think, much like yourself, this year has been really busy. So it's been more work than holiday so far. And I think I'm actually going to go back to the UK. I have to give up the holiday idea. I'm going to have to go back to the UK and just get some work done. But before I do that, I'm going to enjoy like a week. I'm going to take a week off this week. I'm actually in Koh Samui in Thailand. Have you been to Thailand?
No, I haven't, but I have some friends who've been.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Really, really nice. Worth going to.
Closest I've been was Bali one time, years ago.
I'm not going to get to go. I'm gutted about that. Did you enjoy it?
Not really. No, it was. The coffee was cool. They had also really good coffee. I even had the poop coffee. This animal eats the coffee and then poops it out, and then they clean it and make coffee. It sounds disgusting, but it's really cool.
You can't just say I had the poop coffee.
I forget what they call it. It's like an animal. It's I went to the farm too where they do it. Okay. But I'm a huge coffee fan, so that was pretty cool.
Whereabouts are you from?
Florida, born and raised Florida redneck.
Oh, okay. And so yeah. my cousin went to Bali, and he said the same thing. Like most people tell me, oh, it's beautiful and it's amazing, and he was the same. He was like, nah, thought shit.
Maybe I'm a spoiled brat. Like I grew up in Florida. It's like a tropical paradise. So
it's beautiful. It is beautiful. Florida's really nice, and you've got a lot of that close, haven't you? You've got the Dominican is like a 2-hour flight away, and Cuba's not far.
Oh yeah.
It's all handy for you.
When I was younger, I used to do. My family would do a little traveling to the Caribbean islands, Turks and Caicos, Bahamas, stuff like that. Yeah, it's nice.
Oh, well, Bali, and I forget what I said about Thailand. You don't need to.
I'll tell you this though, before we get on to the more pertinent information. Yeah. I've been to Hawaii as well. I spent a week there, and that was one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. I think I went to Kauai was the island. Yeah.
That was the recommendation I got. And what I was going to do originally was go from Thailand to Japan to Hawaii and then come over for the 21 convention just to check it out. But with the work commitments, I'm like, I have to give in. I've got to go back to the UK. So Hawaii was worth a go. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I might do that.
It's like Florida, except it has mountains and it's a bit cooler and nicer and the people are awesome. They apologize profusely for any kind of bad weather, like immediately. They're like, we're so sorry. I'm like, you don't control the weather. Like, it's fine, dude. Really wild. Excellent coffee too. Jesus. Very good.
This is how you rate places in the world, by the coffee standards.
Oh yeah, dude. Melbourne, Australia, not I have some criticisms, but the coffee is not one of them.
Do they poop in their coffee there, or?
I mean, not to my knowledge, but who knows, man? So we were talking about before the call. Let's hit on something I think very personal that I thought would be pretty cool. So you mentioned Patrice O'Neal being one of your favorite comedians. He's a huge favorite within the manosphere and the red pill community. one of the communities that we focus on and interact with a lot. So talk to me a little bit about how you found him and what he means to you. He died a number of years ago, I think 2011.
He died in 2011. If I can do this without tearing up, I'll have done well. There was a time where I couldn't even say his name without becoming so emotional. So in 2011, I was completely. Can I swear?
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
I was fucked. I was very depressed, very anxious, coming out the back end of a bad relationship with a borderline personality disordered girl who probably also had histrionic personality disorder. And if anybody's been through that kind of relationship, as I know you have, it leaves you in a terrible mental state. And I didn't have any tools to recover from it. You know, I was running this global brand as a self-defense instructor, teaching men in the, you know, like bodyguards, military, the air marshals were using my shit at one time out their training center in Las Vegas, how to defend themselves from people who wanted to kill them. But I couldn't defend myself from my own girlfriend. So I was depressed, I was anxious, and I was thoroughly fucking ashamed of myself. I stopped. I think I killed my own business as an act of self-destruction. I choked it. And it forced me to go back into doing door work. I was a nightclub security doorman, like in my 20s when I was younger. And so I'd run this successful business. I'd made money and I'd done this really good brand. And then I got with this girl, was destroyed the whole thing. And I'm back to going on the door. So fucking depressed. And I'm working, doing what little work I have left during the day with the Street Fight Secrets was the name of the channel. And at night, I'm a nightclub security guard in London, working for £9 an hour. Dreadful period of my life. And I start listening to a lot of YouTube videos, and I was listening to a lot of stand-up comedy to try and just get through the day without killing myself. And I was listening to Tyler Durden. And on one of the comments on one of his PUA videos, somebody said, "Oh, you should listen to Patrice O'Neal."
So you mean Owen Cook from RSD,
right? Yes, yeah, the RSD guy, yeah.
Cool.
Are you connected with those guys? But you're aware of their stuff.
Yeah. We've had a lot of their coaches in the past speak at the conference. Alex, Brad Branson, Natural Tim, a lot of them. So yeah, I know the guys.
Yep. Okay, that's good, because I don't know your community that well. Like I'm not really too sure what the whole red pill thing is. I know a little bit about MGTOW. The PUA stuff, I've listened to that stuff in the background a little bit. But anyway, I was working one day. I put Patrice O'Neal on, and it's the Black Phillip show. And all I can hear is these New Yorkers talking over the top of each other in slang. But I'd broken the machine that I was working on, so I was stuck under a desk fixing it, and I couldn't escape to turn it off. And it was like this weird coincidence that I couldn't escape. And so I was under there for 20 minutes. And after the 20 minutes, I found myself laughing. And then I found myself going, holy shit, one of these guys, the guy with the weird laugh, this really silly laugh, I'm like, he's saying things that are actually really profound. And I thought at first maybe he just said one thing and he didn't. And then I was like, oh, there's a philosophy here. So I gorged on all the Black Phillip shows, and I consumed all the material that was out there. I worked with a guy. I didn't work with. I helped a guy called Mischief Maker who made the documentary about Patrice O'Neal, which is out. I hosted it on my channel because he couldn't host it on his because he got infractions for copyright. Okay. So that's there on the Spartan Life Coach channel somewhere. And basically, yeah, I absorbed all of his information. I absorbed all of his stand-up. He's probably one of the best stand-up comedians who ever lived. And then within 5 months of discovering him, the fucker goes and dies. Yeah. So I was absolutely, and there's I've spoken to a few people online who that happened to. Like they discovered him literally within 8-9 months or a year of him dying. I was absolutely devastated. So yeah, I found myself coming back to his material a lot as I was pulling my life back together and sort of going, you know, what is this? What Patrice pointed to in a funny way a lot of the times was boundary infractions. Like he could talk about boundary infractions in a way that nobody else could. The non-explicit slow drip effect of somebody just pushing and pushing and pushing at you. and then actually pointing that out and being able to be, and he would always say, be philosophical, be rational, don't be abusive, don't be mean, just have the conversation, but try and induce, he didn't say it in this way, but what I heard was induce a new level of consciousness, induce a new way of thinking about what it is that we're doing. And he pointed out something which is taboo to say but is true, is that a lot of women are raised to think that manipulative behavior is okay. And it's one of these things that's hyper normalized. Yeah. So you end up with a kind of covert abuse, or not. Sometimes it's not abuse per se, but it's an abusive conversational style. And he would say that. He would say, this is abuse. He would laugh and go, you're being abusive. But you can't hear and see your own abusiveness. And that sort of started a whole process of thought for me around the issue of relationships and love that was really profound in a way that no philosopher, no psychologist, no speaker I'd ever listened to before had ever hit me on that level. And it changed my worldview. So Patrice was a big one.
Yeah, I'll say this about Patrice too, that the Red Pill community, he's the favorite comedian as far as I know in that community of men, a couple 100,000 at this point. And I would say this is kind of a loose way of interpreting or describing what the Red Pill movement or community is. It's like looking at the truths that Patrice built his comedy on and understanding those and formalizing them into something you can use rather than just a joke that gets you thinking, which is good. Yeah. It's like, how do you put this into blog posts, books? How do you get men to understand these principles, understand what's going on? Yeah. So yeah, he's a huge favorite. Yeah, I like Bill Burr a lot too. Actually, he's a great one.
I love Bill Burr. Bill Burr. I mean, I must have. Again, it's very, very similar to Patrice. I just would listen to that stuff just to get through the day. I would just listen to a lot of stand-up comedy, and they're both from Boston. Who's the other Bostonian? There was 3 Bostonian comedians I absolutely fucking loved. There was Bill Burr, Patrice O'Neal. But anyway, they're similar, very, very down to earth, very sort of cynical view of looking at things, and I really, really loved it. Really loved it.
Sounds healthy. Yeah, maybe it is. So let's get into some more specifics. On your channel, you focused a number of times on actually spotting narcissists and cluster Bs, essentially dangerous personalities, whether you classify them in a cluster B set or not. Mm-hmm. So another thing you focused on too that I like a lot is healing from those relationships, which you don't see as much about, or quite as much about. Sure. So for the guys watching who've been through their own toxic relationship, whether or not they have a intellectual understanding of it, what can you say to those guys in terms of how your channel can help them, or what kind of content exactly do you focus on for them?
I think like if you've been through any kind of emotionally abusive relationship, I can help. I can help you. So one of the things that all people struggle with, but men and women struggle with, is being able to identify abuse. That's why they have terms like gaslighting within the narcissism community. It's not always, abuse is not always a slap in the face or being told, oh, shut up, you fucking idiot. It's not always verbal or physical. It can be done through meta communication. It can be done through guilt tripping. It can be done through body language. It can be done through manipulation of context, environmental abuse, atmospheric abuse. And so I can help people. What I usually do is I help people to identify where that has happened. And people get a lot of relief from that, because when you're in it, you're usually isolated from your friends and family, because that's what they do. And they will make you feel like it's just you on your own. And part of their game is to wear away at your confidence and to convince you that you're crazy. So then you're constantly stuck in this loop of, is it me or is it them? Is it me or is it them? Is it me or is it them? And that's very tiring. And that's the kind of, at that level, it can get dangerous. So what I'm doing now is I have coaches who work for me, and I'm saying to them to monitor when people come on, like for a Skype session, a video chat, like we're talking now, look at their facial expressions, look at the meta communication, and see if it's changing session by session. Because the level of despair is so great, you see it on the person. You can read it, you can hear it in the emails they're writing, you can see it on their face. They're just exasperated, and they've been driven completely fucking bonkers, and they're depressed, they're anxious, panicky, their eyes dart around the room. And then usually inside of like 3 or 4 1-hour long sessions, they're chilled out because they've been heard, they've been believed, they've been validated in their experience, and we feed back to them and just educate and go, you know, well, when your ex-husband said this to you, are you aware that he was doing that so you would feel this way? When your ex-wife said this to you, are you aware that she's doing, oh, I thought she was, but I wasn't sure. No, she definitely was doing it. You know, it lends a lot of relief. So people can expect to be heard, be validated. And then, unlike, we started to talk about where I differ from mainstream counseling and psychotherapy, which in principle, I don't really massively. There's nothing I do. I speak to psychotherapists and counselors all the time, and they follow my work. In principle, nothing is different. It's the manner in which it's presented, and the focus that I have is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And we stay very solutions focused. So with the coaching, it's like, okay, that sucked. We want to help you get on with the rest of your life, because if you stay depressed and you stay anxious, they win, and nobody wants them to win.
Yeah, they basically live in rent free in your head, right?
Exactly that. And so getting people back focused on solutions, getting them back to themselves, getting them back feeling healed, feeling comfortable inside their own skin, happy to make their own decisions, you know, that kind of thing. That's what we do with people. So that's what people can expect if they go over to the channel there.
Badass. Yeah, and everyone should. And I actually put the link to his channel in the video description underneath this video. So anybody who wants to go check it out, you can do that. Subscribe, smash the like button on this video and all of his videos and all that good jazz.
Thank you.
You know, speaking of differences you have for the differences that you do have with mainstream kind of psychology and therapy, it's not even, I don't even know if this is a difference, but it's something you focus on. You actually differentiate between malignant narcissism and benign narcissism. So that would be like the vicious, toxic narcissism you would get with the dark triad, per se, in a relationship, versus someone who's just like full of themselves and kind of an asshole.
There's kind of, it's not really my distinction. Like mainstream Freudian psychoanalytic theory would say there's healthy narcissism, which everybody has. You're supposed to love yourself. But it's not a sliding scale where you go healthy narcissism. Oh no, I'm a complete asshole and I want to eat people's souls. Like full blown NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, is quite rare, and it's a distinct thing. It has nothing to do with healthy narcissism. A pathological, malignant narcissism, which is implied in the term NPD, means you've had a total break from reality and you got lost in a narcissistic fantasy of your own godlike status at a very young age because of pretty intense trauma. You would have been traumatized and spoiled at the same time, usually. And then you're just trapped. You're trapped in this fantasy and you can no longer see reality as it is. That's why when
I think I've seen you describe it too as like a shell. It's like a hollow shell and the person inside is basically gone.
That's right.
Am I describing that right?
Yeah, narcissistic shell. They're trapped inside of a narcissistic shell. This is actually Sam Vaknin, the world's leading authority on narcissism. It's his description. There is a narcissistic shell is formed. So it's a defense. The narcissistic personality disorder is a defense to a hostile childhood, traumatic childhood environment. And it's the shell kind of on the inside of the shell is like a mirror in which if I look at myself, I'm beautiful, I'm perfect, I'm all powerful, I'm all knowing. On the outside of that shell is the reality in which I'm just some schmuck like everybody else. So everybody who I interact with, I can only see through the opaque shell. So all of my perceptions are distorted. My emotional intelligence is held back at maybe like age 5 or 6, which is why the guys watching this, interactions with ex-girlfriends, with ex-wives, and you go, God, that was really childish. That was really infantile. It's quite literally an infantile personality disorder. Now, they can play grown-ups very well. They can act as a grown-up very well because they know how to foster the emotional responses of people around them. But when it actually comes down to real, emotional, authentic vulnerability, like that vulnerability that you displayed when you did the Marrying Medusa video and put that out there, which was very brave, they can't do that. It's not within their emotional range to even consider that possibility because they don't really have authentic feelings per se. And this is where people get confused. They go, oh, they don't have feelings. They don't have shame. They don't have guilt. They do, but it's ossified. It's twisted and it's been suppressed since childhood. So it's not, shame can be healthy. Narcissism can be healthy. None of their emotional responses are anywhere near healthy. They're all malignant.
Yeah, this is what I've read when I first started, researching these kinds of ideas after my relationship, that marriage ended. Yeah, you discover. Oh, sorry, package delivered at the door.
It doesn't matter who breaks in because you're packing. You're fine.
Yeah, that's true. I'm ready to roll. These are good FBI rounds in it too. So,
these are the good FBI rounds. They're not the shit that you buy at Walmart. These are the good ones.
Hell no, nothing but the best. Nothing but the best. Feed my narcissism with good ammo.
I'm sure whoever gets shot would be happy to know that. You'd be like, those are very expensive rounds you have in your body right now.
Well, the reason I actually buy them for my handgun is like, if it's good enough to protect law enforcement and help them out, it's good enough for me at the end of the day. So
as a Brit, I had no respect for the importance of rounds until I went to California, and I was like, I got to shoot, I got to try this thing, and we did with the Glock, and then we got like a 357, and they handed us the rounds, like a packet of rounds, and I'm like, these are heavy, these are quite frightening, and then I loaded one of the fuckers up. I walked away. The next day, my palm was black just from the kick off those things, and I was like, oh, the round is what counts. It's the size of the gun counts, but the round is what really fucking counts. So you buy them because they're the high quality rounds.
Yep, high quality, they work, and I mean it's standardized in a lot of law enforcement agencies. So if they risk their lives all the time. So if it's good enough to protect them, it's good enough to protect me.
I like that thought.
And I hope a courtroom would like it as well. So in the event that that ever happens, that I have to defend myself, and then not just with a gun, but later on too.
Yeah.
Guns are it's a whole thing. Back to psychology and narcissism and cluster Bs. I feel like we're gonna go off on a lot of tangents, but I have no problem with that. Let's talk about healing. I feel like that's something that's not. I mean, I have my own personal experience in going through my relationship and then trying to, healing from it, trying to heal from it, looking back, am I healing from it? Have I healed from it? How much more is there to go? I'm already way past it. It's a very interesting journey in itself. And I imagine it's unique to each person to some degree. But can you tell us a little bit about what happened with your first toxic relationship like that and how it led?
Sure.
No sweat.
Never talked about it publicly before. Should be fine, right? It's a little bit of an embarrassing one because coming out the back of that one, I was like, wow, that was bad. That was so tough. And basically what it was a girl who had literally been abandoned. She was nobody's going to figure this out. Nobody who I know will watch this. She's a Chinese Malaysian who emigrated to the UK with her family, her mother and father. And the father left and went back to Malaysia when she was 4. So the father issues are baked in the cake. Daddy left. Huge abandonment issues, which is classic for creating borderline personality disorder.
Yep.
More so usually in the typically reported in the literature, in the peer-reviewed published literature, in women more than men, particularly when there's issues with the father. And this girl was classic for that, highly emotionally dysregulated. She drank a lot. She engaged in a lot of promiscuous sex. She took drugs. And I looked at that and said, ooh, that looks like wife material, because I'm a very clever human being who thinks that way. She was also very pretty and we worked well in the sex. And that was really what the embarrassing part of it is. That's what hooked me in. And I stayed in a absurdly, childishly abusive relationship just because the sex was good. I was 30. And at that time I was like, well, it's totally worth it. I'm looking back now and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Young, dumb, and full of cum.
Exactly. And no guidance. This is the other reason why I love Patrice, because he would talk in terms of guidance, and he would talk in terms of sort of saying, he grew up without a father. I have a father, but he is a criminal psychopath who wasn't really there. So I related to that lack of guidance. I didn't have a male authority figure to say to me, hey, don't get with a stripper, who drinks a lot and takes drugs, and then try and turn her into some little housewifey girlfriend, because she'll play that game whilst it's good for her to play it, but it's just not a clever. These are not wise moves
No,
for
it's
a
like
gentleman.
it's like a theme park of dating is what it is. It's like roller coasters are going on. It's like it's fun, but
Yes.
not a good idea. Not a good idea.
Yeah. And it was like that. It was very much like a roller coaster ride with it. So I came out of that with the sense of like, wow, I've really been hard done by. And there was other elements to it. There was like, her mother came to me in Malaysia, as in Thailand. Black magic is common. It's very daily. It's normal to talk about ghosts and spirits and black magic. And her mother actually came to me and said, she said in broken English, I'm so sorry. My daughter has made BOMO against you. She made black magic against you. I got it in my head. I believed it. That made me move to Malaysia. I went to see a Sufi master who healed me of the black magic. That's a whole other yeah. Whole of the story. And to this day, I don't know whether to interpret it literally in the way that they would, or from like a Jungian metaphorical sort of perspective. That's a conversation that we can have one time over a couple of glasses of gin, because you really don't know. Like you there's no idea. There's no way of knowing. But very, very strange experiences occurred when I was in Malaysia around this whole thing. So I thought that was bad. I had no fucking idea what bad was until I met a girl 7 years later who I think was probably more in line with your experience.
Okay.
Borderline and histrionic is tough, but you still have a sense of who you are. And it's kind of like, on the receiving end, it's kind of like dealing with an overt narcissist. You can negotiate, because if you give them what they want, they'll eat, be full, and leave you alone. When you deal with a psychopath, you can't fucking negotiate, because they're like chaos worshippers,
They're
where
like wild
Michael
animals is what I call them.
yeah,
It's like wild animals.
exactly. It's like a wild animal. Michael Caine did his whole speech in the last Batman movie about being in Burma and trying to deal with terrorists in Burma by offering them jewels. And he said, "Oh, they threw all the jewels away, and some men just want to watch the world burn."
Yep.
Was the line. And that's because the Joker is this archetype of the Joker from tarot cards, the Zero, the Fool, total chaos. He doesn't want anything. He doesn't want it. What do you give him? How do you negotiate? He doesn't want anything. They just want destruction. And that was then like, I thought I knew what I was dealing with, and I thought I was initiated. I was like, I've had my baptism of fire. I know what a bad relationship is. And it was like, motherfucker, you don't know anything.
I gotta learn the hard way. Hold my beer. Hang on a second. Yeah. Yep.
And it was like, when a tiger brings down a gazelle, they start on the ass to get to the guts, and that's how they pull the guts out through the asshole. That I felt like I was having my guts pulled out through my asshole by a hungry tiger over a period of months. It was awful, and I changed. I mean, I could see myself losing my sanity. Like I was going crazy. I was being pulled into this alternate reality in which I was warped.
Well, most cluster Bs have what's called crazy making behavior, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or there's some term like that. Yeah,
that's
right. They literally drive you crazy.
That because there's this new term. It's new to me. I don't know how long it's been around, but I'm seeing it in the narcissism forums and in the online community. They're talking about reactive abuse. And I don't know if it's an official diagnostic term or just one the community has come up with, because they do come up with good stuff. Reactive abuse is, I drive you crazy until you hit me, till you scream at me, or whatever, and then I say you're crazy.
Yep.
And that's what I lived. I lived with that on and off for 3 years, and she was very, very good at it. The thing is, with that personality disorder of the cluster B, psychopaths, histrionics, borderlines, narcissists, they're usually a comorbid. If they're at, and Sam Vaknin has said this, everything kind of makes sense until you get to the psychopathic end, where up is down, left is right, and the point is there is no point. Why are we arguing? Because we are. We're not arguing to get anywhere. we're arguing so I can hear myself screaming because I love to scream and be in arguments, is the more psychopathic worldview. So yeah, there is this crazy making behavior, and if they're good at it, it will make you crazy. And you know, the elephant in the room here, you wouldn't have put up with it if you didn't love the girl. I put up with it because I was in love. I mean, people don't stick around for this because it's fun. It's because you think there is something there that is worth salvaging, and you get stuck. It's like a bad gambler. You know, you're having a bad run and you should stop, but you think, no, this hand, oh fuck, okay, this hand, oh shit, okay, this hand, and your brain just gets stuck in this loop. I can fix this. I've already done 6 months. I've already done 18 months.
Almost like an emotional sunk cost fallacy, I think is kind of what you're saying.
The sunk cause fallacy, exactly that. Exactly.
Yeah, the gambler's fallacy. Yeah. If I just play one more time, it's going to happen. If we have one more fight, we'll figure things out.
Exactly. And that's, you know, that's a point where if I just had some guidance, if I just had somebody say to me, hey, do you know about the sunk cause fallacy? Do you know that this is your brain is going to play this trick on you, that you've got to fight, because if you don't, you're going to be really screwed. Had it been business, I would have been fine. I never reinvest in bad investments. I'm really good at identifying a bad investment and going, okay, that £5,000 is gone. Fuck it, because otherwise it'll turn into £50,000, and I don't want that. With love, that just doesn't seem to happen for me. I'm like, no, I can fix this. I can make it work. So then I was led down a path of looking at leading away from mapping what narcissism and psychopathy is, which is very well mapped. There's loads of people out there who've mapped the problem to going, well, what is it in me? You know, I'm interested now in talking to the clients and going, what is it in us that makes us stick around? Why do we think we can fix these people? Why do we think we need to? And that's where my healing process goes to, is looking at what is it in childhood, or what is it in your life, or what is it in your belief system that makes you think you have to tolerate this just for love?
Yep. Yeah, that's one of the things I'd say looking at your channel has helped me understand not just your work, but your work and a combination of a few others, but looking at what led to my relationship with Medusa in the first place. Something that occurred to me right away, like why did this happen? Like let's try to understand why. But I'd say in the past 6 months, I've started to kind of appreciate more like how fucked up my childhood was. Particularly, one of the ways you put it was a catastrophic failure in caregiving.
Yeah,
I think I've heard verbatim you say something like that on your channel, and I was like, bingo. That describes, loosely speaking, like the majority of my childhood and my siblings to a great extent too.
Well, you would think, like, as a rational person, you know, it's a biblical commandment, thou shalt honor thy father and mother. You're going to sit there and bitch about your mum and dad. It's not morally righteous to do that. So you block a lot of stuff out, and you'll tell yourself, well, they didn't rip my fingernails out. They didn't make me sleep outside in the rain. It can't have been that bad. What I spend a lot of time doing in coaching is sort of saying to people, look, when we are babies, your needs are very, very high. When we're little vulnerable children, we need a lot of stuff. And if we're not given that stuff, it fucks us up. It leaves us hungering for that. It leaves us thirsting for that. The pain of the loss or of not receiving the things we need, it twists us. It makes us engage in coping mechanisms and, you know, just a way of trying to accommodate the fact that we're in a lot of pain because we didn't get what it was that we needed in childhood.
Or also, I think it can even kind of, I don't know if you agree with this, but, you know, shoot it out there. I think in a lot of ways, it'll set you up for a toxic relationship, independent of the specifics. It's like you're just set up for it in the first place. And in my case, I was learning about, you know, how to pick up women and stuff, which was going fine for years until I found the one girl who was particularly more intense and more crazy and had a stronger set of dark triad traits than I had ever seen in my life up to that point, or at least knowingly encountered.
Yeah. I think you can, there's a couple of things. You can end up feeling like love is conflict, love is self-sacrifice, love is accepting the tyrannical commands of a complete lunatic while sacrificing all my own needs. Or it might be, I feel guilty because this girl is just like my mum. My dad left my mum when she was young. It could be some other thing that you're trying to resolve, but it's usually centered around the theme of solving this puzzle box of love that goes back to childhood. And in the coaching, you know, leading people to the point of going, hey, are we going to just give up on that one now? Can we do that and just get on with our lives? And they'll go, yeah, okay. Because you can't resolve these issues in adulthood that go back to childhood. I'm like, I don't have a time machine. I'm sorry. Like there's nothing that we can do about that. And you've already given up 30 years, 40 years of your life in low quality living because of stuff in childhood. I can give you back the time that you have left, but that's all I can do. And that helps people. That helps people sort of move forward.
That's badass. Yeah, it's badass, and I say that on a personal level too. Like looking at your looking at your content time to time. I can't wait to have you at the convention, man. I think you're going to be the dark horse. With no reference to the dark triad, but
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to getting there and chatting to the guys there. And I want to find out. I want to find out more about what they're interested in and what they're mainly focused on, and to see, whilst I'm there, do they want me to talk about dealing with relationships, recovering from relationships like that? Do they want me to talk about childhood trauma and how that imprints on you, whatever it is that they want? I want to be as useful as I can be.
You do have a couple options. I'll say this too. In the manosphere in general, but particularly with the red pill, I don't know if it's most, but I suspect it's over half. Most guys find the red pill community from a traumatic event, and probably exiting traumatic relationship, a lot of which I believe are related to cluster Bs and personality disorders. It's guys who get into those relationships, they see feminine behavior amplified to a ridiculous level, and it freaks them out to the point that it hurts them, makes them look for answers if they didn't kill themselves or something like that, or shut off and get back into a cycle of finding another girl to fill that role.
Right. So, yeah, it's worth putting that note in here that, like, when it comes to narcissism, it is no respecter of boundaries. They do function like a group mind, alien or artificial intelligence, and they all do the same shit. They're all trained at the same University of Demonology. It doesn't matter the race. It doesn't matter the age. It doesn't matter the gender.
Zombie witch doctor, right? The zombie witch doctor.
Exactly, zombie witch doctors. So, like, they'll all do and say the same stuff, but they're all going to use the weapons that are available to them. So, if it's of advantage to me to use my feminine wiles, to use my sexuality to dominate you, to drive you crazy, to get attention from competitors so that you're feeling insecure, that's what I'm going to do. Similarly for women, if it's convenient for me as a male narcissist in a relationship with a woman to dominate you physically through the threat of violence or stalking or, whatever it is, that's what they'll use. Whatever. If they're old, they'll use the fact they're old. If they're young, they'll use the fact that they're young. When you have like interracial relationships and people dating across cultures, they'll use any excuse. They'll be like, I have to do this to you, love. I'm English. All English men do this, that, whatever bullshit they can rely on, that's what they'll do. And that's really horrible and frightening, because the 80% of my clients are women, and they won't admit it, but they end up hating men. They end up with a misandric worldview.
Yeah.
And I have to try and bring them out of that, because they come to me and they go, I want to get into a relationship. And I'm like, dude, you hate men.
Jesus Christ.
Don't try and get into a relationship. You still hate men. You hate the essence of men. You hate masculinity, because now you associate it with like a power game being dominated. And I see that in some of the male clients who come to me. They end up hating women because they've had this tortured, demonic, horrifying, caricatured version of femininity thrust at them and used to hurt them. Of course, their view of women is gonna fucking change, and then they'll try and cover that by learning seduction techniques, and without resolving that internal sort of anxiety and pain and depression around.
Well, that's assuming they even find anything like that in the first place. I think a lot of guys don't even go that far. They just stay in whatever life they had, more or less, and a new version of it, so to speak, to some degree. And then you don't even have, like, I at least had I was very familiar with the PUA community and the men's rights community when my experience ended. And I'm glad I had those resources, because it led me to finding people like you. It led me to finding books like from some of our speakers now, Joe Navarro and other psychologists and stuff.
Yeah, it's a big problem, actually. Post emotional abuse, the standard response amongst all humans is to self-isolate, to withdraw into the cave. They don't go out as much. They don't go to the gym as much. They start to self-abandon. so they're not, they're not as pretty as they would be otherwise. Like, guys are getting overweight, and and then they're lonely, and then they self-isolate more, and you have this horrible downward spiral.
Yeah.
And it's all caused because one shitty person decided to take a shit in their soul and really hurt them. And I want to let people know, like, it's deliberate. Like, they really are trying to destroy you, your life, your money, your business, your family. The more destruction, if we're talking dark triad, I can dish out, the more powerful I am, and the more supply I can generate from that. It makes me significant. It's a horrifying worldview, but if we're warned of that and we acknowledge the horror of that, then we have a better chance of protecting ourselves so it doesn't happen, and recovering from it as well.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit. I heard you mention earlier something that I've kind of given some thought as well. I think you called it hyper-normalizing, basically abusive behavior. And yeah. I see that as almost today, like, loosely speaking, Instagram enables women to like amplify narcissistic traits to a degree that they previously didn't even have access to. And now it's normalized, whereas 30 years ago, it would have been seen as like the beginning of a personality disorder. So what do you think about, for men and women both, what do you think about technology normalizing what would previously have been like cluster B behavior, or at least alluding to it? Like, is that something wrong there?
Well, there's an age gap between me and you. You're 27?
29.
29. But
Yep.
You still remember, I would think, taking cameras to be developed at your local drugstore.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So the technological leap that we've gone through, because whenever we're talking about technology, I always like to set the context by saying we haven't gone through 10 years of technological development in the last 10 years. We've gone through 60. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's this exponential increase, and I just don't think we can keep up with it.
Yeah.
What you're saying about that particular, the social media sphere, yeah, you're rewarded for pure narcissism. I was actually listening to somebody talking about the use of social media. I think it was one of the RSD guys, and I was like, that's pure narcissism. That's a really bad piece of advice. I'm going to try what he says. So I did it, and I got more likes on the post than any other post, and I'm like, this is stupid. You're liking nothing. You're giving me likes for going, hey, I'm here and my life is fucking cool, and offering nothing but that. So we do live in strange times where virtue, the notion of virtue is preposterous. It makes people laugh. You want to talk about courage. You want to talk about responsibility. You want to talk about honor. You're a fucking nerd and shut up. That's pointless. So all of our values are now replaced with, they're inverted, and they're replaced with anti-values, like psychopathy, like being cruel, like being totally materialistic to the point of obnoxiousness, and highly narcissistic.
But that isn't to say, though, that these things aren't of value in particular isolated uses. Like, a lot of businessmen are known to have psychopathic traits, or what would be considered antisocial traits, but hopefully they don't accumulate to the point of disorder.
I think like it's a difficult subject, because usually online what happens is you have like perpetrators and victims want to go, it's all bad.
Yeah.
And I've not got to this point yet of sort of saying to them, like, if you know somebody who's highly narcissistic and you have them as an ally, or a psychopath as an ally, they will give you feedback that is excellent. I mean, I can't call Sam Vaknin a friend because he doesn't have friends, but I can communicate with him, and he'll tell me things about myself that nobody would dare to say, but he'll just say it because he's a diagnosed psychopathic narcissist, and it's good feedback. It's good information. I need to hear it, but nobody else will say it. So yeah, some of these traits are positive, but I do think we are disappearing up our own bum holes a little bit culturally, because you can't just all be taking pictures of ourselves. I mean, in your lifetime, you would know that if you took a picture of yourself, like when you were 18, when you were 18, people would laugh at you. Like, what the fuck are you doing? If you took 100 pictures of yourself, picked the best one, filtered it, photoshopped it, your mates, I hope, would be like, dude, get a fucking grip of yourself. That's normal behavior for men. Even for men, it's not it's not shamed, it's not looked down on. And there is such a thing as healthy shame, and we've lost that. So there's no, people are shameless now. That's not good. High narcissism, high levels of entitlement, total shamelessness, cultural. Well, what does that mirror? That mirrors a psychopathic outlook. So we're actually moving, I would claim, beyond narcissism that's over as a kind of a vanity. Okay, fine. You think you're wonderful, whatever. It's when it gets psychopathic, that's where I'm like, we should be worried. We definitely should be worried about the way people use social media now. Definitely.
And when you're saying psychopathic in that context, you mean like sadistic, malicious, malevolent, shit like that, right?
Well, the term psychopath, the way I always explain it to people, and some psychologists would disagree with this. I look at the history and the context of where the terms come from. So the vast majority of work on psychopathy is American, and it's kind of, therefore it should be understood as an American term. And it's a term that was used, has been used in its study, not in its origins, of the average American prisoner. So it's the average American criminal. So a psychopath is there's the prison population.
Well, mostly it's male too, right?
It's
All
male.
the studies, yeah.
Absolutely. The studies were all male. Let there be no mistake that psychiatry is still a very, it's an antiquated sort of community, and it's highly sexist. I mean, the stuff they write, even to I mean, histrionic personality disorder is a reference to a woman's womb. Hysterium is a womb, and they're basically, it goes back to the Greek idea that if a woman became hysterical, her womb was bouncing around inside of her body. I mean, it's literally what it goes back to. And I've said to people, look, I know just as many men who are histrionic as I know. So it's a very gendered study field, and you'll be told, oh, there's way more male psychopaths and way more male narcissists than women. And I'm like, that's fucking bullshit. It's absolute bullshit.
By the way, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but I recently launched a free website, femalepsychopath.com. Oh. And I'm actually collecting authors, contributing authors who want to write for it, and basically focus on cluster dangerous personalities in women for men to understand. So you're welcome to write on that if you'd like to be an author at some point.
I'd love to. I mean, it drives feminists nuts, because they'll hear me talking and they'll go, oh, he agrees with us because he's saying psychiatry is sexist. And then I'll be like, you didn't wait for it's a 1-2. There's a jab and then there's the right. You can wait for the right cross. The right cross is stop saying that only men are cluster B narcissists and psychopaths. Yeah. Clearly. And there is new research coming out all the time. They're reviewing work on female borderlines, and they're going, well, hang on, what are the traits we look for in psychopaths? What are they in borderlines? Oh, shit. Most of these women not most, but many of these women who we've identified as borderlines actually are psychopaths. So it does cross over. But what I was going to say is, when people think of psychopath, don't think of Hannibal Lecter. That's what movies have trained us to think of. Think of the scene in Heat where Robert De Niro says to Al Pacino, do you see me holding up liquor stores with Born to Lose tattooed on my chest? No. And what he's saying is, I'm not the average fucking criminal. I mean, he does obviously get killed in the end, but he's a higher level criminal. He's a higher level psychopath. The average prisoner is holding up liquor stores with Born to Lose on their chest. Yeah. They're losers. It's a loser mindset. They have very low resilience to stress, very low impulse control. They want what they want with the wild abandon of a tantruming 3-year-old. And if they don't get it, they resort to violence or. So when you think of psychopaths, think American prisoners, but largely the American prison population of the 60s and 70s. That's where our understanding of psychopaths come from. Totally valid, totally a good place to start. I use the American Psychiatry Association's definitions for all this. I use the DSM. Okay. But it needs, once you've got that and you go, okay, we're talking about a criminal. So when I was talking to you about when I watched Marrying Medusa for the second time, your video, that's why I was saying to you, oh shit, I thought you were talking about a narcissist. Then I heard it again. And when you were talking about the prostitution, the identity fraud, and she was actually breaking laws.
Oh yeah.
Sort of, those like legal boundaries. That's a psychopath. When they're breaking legal boundaries just because the boundary exists, that's a psychopath. That's
She was
100%.
a real honeypot of crazy. She just picked from all the pots. Just give me a little bit of BPD, a little bit of MPD, a little bit of ASPD. Give me all that shit.
She was greedy with the crazy. She went greedy with the crazy.
I go for the best. I mean, if I'm going to date a crazy chick, I want the craziest one, and I think I did pretty well with that in Florida, relative to Florida at least. The best. The best. I mean, to date, I have not met knowingly a crazier chick. If I did, she was so crazy I couldn't even spot it. Which at this point, I feel more confident, not completely confident, but a lot more confident in my ability to spot and interact with.
That's rare. Like NPD is like maybe 1 or 2 in 100. I think we will find when there's more information gathered, because there's no information and you can't study them. It's not like I can knock on a dark triad's door and say, hey, can I talk to you about your worldview and why you do what you do?
Yeah.
But as we do gather more information, we're going to find that the kind of people that we're talking about, psychopathy with narcissism plus borderline plus histrionic, where they have everything and it's super malignant, it will be very rare, very, very rare.
Yeah.
Most of them will be in prison. They'll already be in jail.
Yeah, that actually brings up my next point. I wanted to talk to you. What are your thoughts on the relation between IQ, intelligence, and these malignant, destructive personality traits and disorders? I don't know. I haven't seen any work you've done on that yet, but I'm assuming you've done something on it.
I don't have the balls. I want to talk about IQ at length. I sit on the sidelines. It's one of the things I don't love everything the man does, but it's one of the things I admire him for is Jordan Peterson talking about that, because in the world of psychology, it really is the world of academic psychology. I mean, it's an absolutely taboo subject, but it's something that, because we don't talk about it, we suffer. Like the idea that everybody is equal and we're all equally capable is obviously fucking moronic nonsense, and yet we stick to it and we try and make the world fair in inverted commas, when it isn't. I mean, some people are very stupid, and it's not fair to make very stupid people do things that are stressful for them to do. In my view, that's my counter argument. As far as the personality disorders go, you can have very, very, very stupid narcissists and psychopaths, and you can have highly, highly intelligent narcissists and psychopaths. It should really only be seen as a coping mechanism that is so it's like a meta coping mechanism that encompasses the whole personality, and it's in the same spectrum as CPTSD, which is you held up the book before for the Pete Walker book. This is a good book. It's complex PTSD is like normal PTSD, but it's where, to use another shooting analogy, instead of a sniper round where it's just one event and one series of problems or a singularity, it's like being hit with a shotgun blast. It's tons and tons and tons of little pellets, and then you have to go through and try and pick up everywhere where all these little pellets have done damage, and it's hard. It's really hard. It's notoriously hard to help people through complex PTSD, and that's what I've been doing for the last 2 months, and I'm sure I've got fucking grey hair as a result of it, but that's the end result that people can get from that. It's only a response to trauma. So your IQ largely is what you're born with. Maybe training can bring it up or down a few points, whereas the personality disorder, that's definitely an environmental thing in my view.
Do you believe there's any, the more I've studied, the more I've actually leaned in that direction, but I personally still believe that there's got to be, well, actually, I don't know if there's got to be, but I suspect strongly that there are genetic and heritable things associated with it. What are your thoughts on that kind of argument? That's a whole debate,
it's a whole debate, and it's a fascinating debate. I think the problem with so I'm a lefty liberal. I was trained in a university by postmodernists, and I was very much leaning in that direction. So the idea of biological determinism was entrained into me as being abhorrent, and as would be like the root causes of racism, sexism, and all of the evils of the world. Obviously, I don't think that way anymore, but I do think it's dangerous to assume that something is genetic just because we feel like it might be so. And I should say there is, at this point in psychology, there's zero evidence for it. They've been looking for it for years. People will say, oh, the Minnesota twin studies, this study, that study, they've all been debunked as being totally without scientific merit. The modern view of psychology, and there are textbooks out there that still say it's genetic, but actually, if you look at the published research, which I do when I can be asked, there's no evidence that there's any genetic component. But I listen a lot to Sam Vaknin. He's a very intelligent man. His IQ apparently has been he's been tested, and it's at 180. He says it probably is at least epigenetic. So there are genes that activate or deactivate dependent on the environment.
Mm-hmm.
I say, okay, I'm open to it. My view is your genetics probably don't give a shit what your personality do. Your genes don't, our DNA doesn't give a fuck whether we prefer vanilla or chocolate ice cream. It wants you to stay alive, to breed and make more people and then die. And I suspect your genes don't care.
But in epigenetics, I have looked into this a little bit with regard to exercise and health and things like that. Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, that's your behaviors being passed on to the next generation potentially. But I've also seen you say too, and I like a lot, that children are like sponges essentially. And if you surround a 3-year-old with a narcissistic father and a BPD mother or something, I mean, you're surrounding that child in a super toxic environment. Like, should you really be surprised what comes out of that? Then blame it on genetics. So it's like, really, like, it's behavior that's around them.
So much of mental health. I mean, like I say, you've got on the one hand, there's no evidence that it's genetic, and there's so much evidence. Like, the beautiful thing about the Pete Walker book, Complex PTSD, is it provides a complete guide to all mental health issues that is purely based on trauma and environment, barring a few things like there are psychotic issues, there are possibly bipolar disorder. Maybe that has a genetic component or come about as a result of damage to the hormonal system through drug and alcohol abuse. But 98% of stuff probably is environmental. As a coach who's offering a therapeutic environment, it's better for me to believe it's environmental because I always have hope. I'm very optimistic. If you just go, well, you're depressed because it runs in your family and it's genetic, where do you go from there?
So basically, even if it's true, it's like, what use does this have for the client trying to improve? Like, does it really help them?
And that's the good point. And also, even if it's really true, in the face of what we are learning about epigenetics, can't we deactivate it? Because we talk about genes as though they're singular, but they're actually clusters of genes that may affect behavior, perhaps. Can we activate, deactivate? Can we train ourselves to not access that part of ourselves and another part? I think it's probably, it harkens back to another era where psychologists were really jealous of doctors, and they wanted to make, like, doctors have their lists of viruses, their list of medicines, their list of symptoms, and they do that. We don't have that. And what we don't want to admit in psychology is, look, this is basically a branch of philosophy where we're doing the best we can. But it's not a science. It's scientific, but it's not really a science. And that's where I would say, if people come to me and say, I believe it's genetic, I wouldn't be like, no, you shouldn't believe that. I would go, well, maybe, or maybe your genes, your person, I don't think your DNA is concerned with personality. I think that's our ego, our narcissism as humans. We experience our personalities and our interaction of personalities very intensely. I don't think our DNA gives a fuck. That's why, by the way, when you split up with your ex, when I split up with my ex, every guy watching this who split up with their ex, you knew consciously she was bad for you, that she was going to destroy you. You still wanted to get back with her. Yeah. I would posit that that's actually a genetic impulse to breed with a healthy partner. And you can't negotiate with your genes. They're thugs. That's like, your genes have evolved in another environment. That's the mafia inside of you. They're going, you're going to get back with that girl. No, I'm not. You're going to do as you're told, or we're going to hurt you. Here's some pain. And we know, the science teaches us that the pain you go through when you're hankering after somebody you've been pair bonded with is not dissimilar to the pain of heroin withdrawal, drug withdrawal. It's real.
I was going to say earlier in the show that, because I almost said, we were talking about this earlier a little bit, but yeah, I think most men and women both underestimate the severity or the intensity of those chemicals and those experiences, pair bonding and all the associated chemical releases, not just from sex, but even physical contact and facial contact with each other and speaking, and like all the habits and routines you get into with somebody like that, cohabitating. It's fucking intense.
What you're talking about there, I believe, is the future of psychology. I think that's really understudied, and it will be what will be studied in the next 20, 30 years over the next few decades. We're going to look at really appreciating the hormonal effects, which we don't fully understand. Like, we barely understand our hormones, and we're trying to say, oh, this gene is a gene responsible for this personality. It's like, let's deal with what we can test, what we know. We can test your hormone levels. We can see, neurotransmitters in urine, so we can have an idea of what's going on there. And yeah, I think you're right. It's really, really underestimated. If the internal thugs, if the inner DNA code is going, get back with that goal or else, and I do believe that that's what happens, we have a punishment reward system inside of us. And yeah, your own body can make you feel really bad, but it might be doing it for good reasons. It's like, no, you pair bonded with that goal.
Yeah.
Go and mate, go
reproduce,
and reproduce. And you're like,
yep.
She doesn't understand my soul. We don't even like the same music. They're like, fuck you.
I think she's going to stab me in my sleep, and your brain's like, tough shit. Like, you need to put a baby in her. Like,
exactly.
You don't matter. The future matters. So it's like, no.
Well, I think that's where, I like it's kind of a little bit nihilistic, but some of Richard Dawkins' work where he talks about the idea that we are just a holding sock for the DNA. We don't really matter. Once you're born, you're just a sock. You don't matter. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe I go too far. Maybe I go too far with it. But I think under those circumstances, I take that as proof that your genetic level, it's a thuggish, primal, it's the lizard brain. It's how do I reproduce and then die? That's it. Doesn't care about anything else.
Yep. Yeah, one of the things that came to mind when we were just talking on a little rant there, what are your thoughts on this? If I look back on my own experience with that toxic relationship, what you have in that situation when I was married to her, we were cohabitating for a number of years, all that, and around each other on a daily basis a lot. What are your thoughts on sensory overload? Because that's kind of what comes to mind based on what you're talking about with all the chemical releases and pair bonding and all that stuff. I mean, when you have someone living with you, male or female, whatever perspective you're coming from, that person is around you all the time. You see them all the time. You smell them all the time, both explicitly and in ways you're probably not even aware of, like with pheromones and stuff. Physical contact, you hear them, their voice, all these things. You talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you were too polite to talk about orgasms, lust, sex. You're entering each other's sexual fantasies. You're with each other for months, so you start like creating like another fantasy that is only between the two of you. There's a good psychoanalyst and philosopher I love, Slovenian, called Slavoj Žižek, and he always says, a man and a woman or two humans together having sex, it's never just two humans having sex. There's always that extra level. So with every human being that you are with, if you're with them if you're having sex with them regularly for more than a month, you're creating a whole other reality. It's just you and them. So that sensory overload, absolutely. Intimacy. I mean, if I live in the house with you and you have to put up with me being in your house for a week, apart from the fact that it would drive you crazy, you're going to pick up accent. You're going to pick up turns of phrase. You're going to, it can be a really good way of training somebody, actually, because it's an unconscious response. Like,
it's immersion, basically.
Total immersion, exactly. And it's been proven time and again to be very effective. That's why the military sticks you in a house with a bunch of other men and wakes you up at 6 o'clock in the morning and says, go for a fucking run, because it brainwashes you. They don't do it. There's a lot of stuff. The military are experts in this. So if you look at what is done with new recruits in their initiation, and then overlay that with what happens in cults, and then overlay that with what happens in abusive relationships, sensory overload is part of it. The extra level, though, is sex. Like, your faces are so close that your tongues are inside of each other's mouths, and then you're talking, and then you're having sex, and then you're talking, and then you eat together, and then if the level, I would even go so far as to say, and I'm not a sexually conservative person. This is one of the many things I disagree with Jordan Peterson on. He's way too sexually conservative for me.
You're gonna fit right into the convention, dude.
Really?
Oh yeah, totally.
Well, I heard you guys talking about how like it's actually probably because of his own experience. Like he married young, and so much of his view of women. Because I get women coming to me saying, "Stop recommending him. He's a misogynist," and I'm like, I don't think he is. I think he is frightened of women, though. Like the way he talks about women is like a small boy full of wonder and awe. And how do we control this chaos? It's like, Jordan, they're
Well,
ghouls. They're not.
he has very narrow. Yeah, I think he's only been with his wife for maybe not that many women. So I think, given his age, he has a very narrow experience of women. I mean, he's been married for a long time, obviously, but there's still like a narrowness to it.
Well, and there's a kind of a narcissism there. He's like, well, this is what I've done with my life, and I think you should all do the same. It's like, no, thank you. I don't want to do. Thanks, Jordan, but no, thank you. Yeah, I would, but I would say to people, look, the opposite end of the spectrum is a lot of sexual liberalism, and the idea is, oh, do whatever you want, fuck whoever you want, dudes and dudettes. Calm down. That's heavy magic. Like if you fuck somebody and you fuck them a few times and you get good at it and you're learning each other's fantasies, you're learning each other's bodies, that's heavy juju, and you shouldn't do that lightly. Similarly, don't let the relationship accelerate too quickly. Don't live with each other too quickly. Don't, this whole thing of spending, as you just said, hours and hours a day. I mean, God, if you wanted to induct somebody into a fucking mind control cult, that's what you do. You occupy, you hijack their consciousness 24/7.
Yep. Yeah, my experience with that relationship, we actually worked together out of the house. She had a home business as well after a while, excluding the prostitution. So yeah, I work from home too. I always, you can't see the whole studio, but
we should definitely talk more, because I live that as well, working from home together.
Yep. It's fun, but it's also exactly like you're saying. It's an excellent way to brainwash somebody. You have full access to them, or very consistent access. And even if in my case, I'm very introverted, so I always kind of wrote myself off and focus in what the fuck I'm doing. But even so, if you're 20 feet from somebody constantly, you have a lot of ability to influence them.
Well, I think there's, and I don't want to, we could go off on a lot of side paths, but I'm also introverted. People think I'm extroverted, but by the classic definition of Jung, I draw my energy from being alone, and I find being around people exhausting. So I'm a classic introvert. I think not just in narcissistically abusive relationships, but it's something that introverts need to be careful of. You're going to let that person into your space, and you will find that just being alone with her probably won't be draining. That's a very special relationship.
That's exactly what I had. It was very bizarre for me, because like you, I'm an introvert, and I do find my energy in being alone. I prefer to be alone usually. That doesn't mean I can't socialize. I've learned how to do that through trial and error and a lot of literally effort and time. But at the end of the day, I'm still an introvert, and I know that at this point that's been clear to me for a number of years. But you're right. That was one thing that was it was very special. I'd never seen that before. I'd never been allowed someone to get that close, and then I still felt energetic and fine with it. Unlike normally where it's draining.
Well, your brain's then going to go, oh, she must be the one. I never felt so comfortable around somebody before like this. I've never known this level of intimacy before. Oops. These are all dangerous new boundary breaks that are going to make you go, wow, this is really special. She's really, and it's, I had a friend of mine who has no psychological training whatsoever pull me to one side and go, there's nothing special about this. Everything that you think is special about this, you're doing it. You're doing it. She's not bringing it. You're bringing it. I was like, no, you don't understand. Get away from me.
Well, I would say with cluster Bs, it's almost like they want you to do that. So like they bring the frame for the painting, and then they're like, yeah, come paint this painting. And you're like, yeah, let's paint painting. But they set it up with the frame.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're actively encouraged to do that in ways that you won't even be aware of. I know that she was involved with you professionally. If we ever do get the chance to sit down and chat, in your decision for her to come on board, but it would have been done so carefully, and she would have really studied you. She was
obsessed with There's a book I have over here somewhere. Where the fuck is it? I remember here it is. She bought this book very rapidly after we met. It was like meeting in event planning idiot's guide, or some bullshit she picked up at Barnes & Noble. And she didn't buy it for me. She bought it for herself.
Right.
And I keep it around because it's actually kind of useful. but I did find it unusual at the time, and because I had never seen something like that before, where a girl was so hyper interested in what I did for work, which to some degree is really fucking unusual.
Yeah.
But I never seen a girl get that intensely focused on trying to understand what I do, which is not even entirely accurate. Like I do event planning, obviously, for the convention, and that's really important. But it's not. I'm not like a passionate event planner. I just do it because I need to do it.
But this is classic, mate, because what she's done is she's
Yeah.
gone, I want to be his perfect partner. What
Yep.
does he do? And then it becomes infantile. He does seminars. I'll be a seminar master. And it's like, that's not really what the dude does.
Yep.
So it's this she studied you, but from an infantile sort of perspective. And this is where they drop the ball. You know, I've heard weird stories from people of stuff that their ex has said, stuff the ex-husband or the ex-wife has said, where they think they're being insightful and pushing the right button, and they hit totally the wrong button. And it's like,
Yep.
who are you talking about? Like, this has nothing to do with
they're feverishly trying to understand you, I think, and I think that was an early. Later, she did. Obviously, they didn't stop there; kept going. But that was just like her first, kind of like throwing what they call it, throwing shit at the wall, seeing what sticks. So it's like,
Yeah,
you've got to understand this.
She's spiraling in, and then by the end, she would have been like, this is what he does.
Yep. Yep. What also I think was unfortunate in that experience with her was a lot of things. Now I do check. I have checked back on this, like in my head, like did this really work out? But the way the company was evolving at the time, and even to this day, it's like there were roles that needed filled that she was not only happy to fill, but someone needed to do them. Someone needed to interview the speakers, which is what she's known for on YouTube for that interview series. And we didn't really have anyone to do it. And I was like, she's volunteering, like she's attractive. She seems to be interested in the convention very much so. And of course she was playing that role. I'm like, just go do it. You know, let's give it a shot and see how you're doing. If you don't fuck it up, then you can keep doing it.
Yeah.
So it was this timing of stuff. It's like, fuck, like not good.
I mean, the problem is for a lot of people who don't think that way is it's so devious. But then on the other hand, it's so obvious. Like if I said to you, you would never do it, obviously. But if I said to you, okay, get with this girl and over a period of 2 years, get closer and closer to her, make her think you're the man of your dreams, it would be a sick thing to do. But it's not a bad philosophical mental exercise to actually go through that process and be like, oh no, it's actually quite cheap what they do. It's actually quite, because people tell you what they love. It's not hard to figure out what a person's core values are, what their fears are, what their dreams are. You just wouldn't be such a fucking piece of shit to deliberately do that for the purpose of deceiving and for the purpose of ripping somebody off.
Yep.
But it's a useful exercise to be able to think in that evil mind space.
Yeah. That was one of the things too. It was like I had never you'd always seen stuff like this on TV shows and movies, and like you'd heard about psychopaths or some sociopaths and shit. But I had never had one been intimate with one like that to that degree, and that was the real. It's like, would I really allow someone who's that big of a piece of shit into my life and get this close? It's like there's just no fucking way. There's no. What are the odds of that happening? It's like, well, the odds are higher than you think.
It's a good point. I can't think of any films or TV shows recently that have really explored this, even though it's an exploding phenomenon, even though, people are talking about it a lot more. I don't see it being represented, which is a shame because, like you say, we all know there's muggers, rapists, and murderers out there. Yeah. But do we know there are people out there who target other human beings, make that human being fall in love with them, so they can steal money, steal time, steal attention, steal sex, whatever their thing is they're stealing? It's a fraud. It's a love con. Yep. No, I mean, I've not seen it. I've not seen it represented. It should be.
Where did all the honest gold diggers go?
Yeah, man. That sounds like the opening line for a Bill Burr bit. Where did all the honest gold diggers go?
Exactly. Yep. So let's talk a little bit about, what do you think about, so a lot of guys watching this channel, like literally almost all of them, if they're not in a relationship or marriage or whatever, they're going out and meeting women to some degree, once a week, once a month, 5 times a week, whatever. They're constantly approaching women and meeting women on the internet in person. What do you think about their susceptibility and the stats on them meeting essentially crazy women? For the guys out meeting dozens of women a month or something like that, and their opportunity to get into a toxic relationship. I don't know if I'm forming the question right, but does that make sense?
No, I think I got it. I'm in a weird headspace on that one because I felt like I couldn't not meet narcissists, like they were everywhere, and now I just never do. I don't really approach women that much. I have way too much work on at the moment, but when I do, like in the last 2 years, all been really nice. People are just. I'm in a reality. It feels like I've shifted quantum realities or some, spiritual thing. Like, they're just nice. They're just good people. Just regular folks. Just not perfect, and sometimes very vain or very narcissistic, which I don't mind, but not abusive. They're not out trying to trick the world and steal stuff. So. I don't want to say it's like a law of attraction thing, but I would say if you have unresolved issues inside of you, I strongly suspect if we leave the spiritual thing out, from a psychological point of view, there is a reticular activation system. We are picking up a lot more information from the environment than we're aware of consciously. So maybe if you have unresolved issues, you will find yourself just happening to meet a lot more nasty types. If you've resolved them, you'll just meet just people. They're just trying to make their way through the world. But yeah, the guys who are out there doing that, you got to be careful. You definitely need to be. I wouldn't say be paranoid, but be careful. And if you do have unresolved issues, just get them resolved. It's so easy to do. It's the literature's out there, the help is out there. Like if you're still heartbroken over your last relationship, if you have a fundamental resentment towards women, or if you're a woman watching this and you have a fundamental resentment towards men, you need to connect with that. You need to process that. You need to heal that. Like if you, as a guy, if you really don't like women and you have an issue, you should be sorting that out before you go out trying to seduce them.
Yeah, I agree. I guess one of the things though is it's like who doesn't have childhood trauma? It feels like it feels like the term is like overused today to the point that people don't take it seriously. Or at least that was my experience. It's like I should have known that I had I guess that I'm older now, I'm almost 30. I look back at my childhood and I'm like, yeah, I was really fucked up. Like this is way not normal. And I sort of knew that growing up, but I did not appreciate how serious it was until now that I'm older. So I guess I think a lot of guys in pickup are going to be like that. They'll come from some sort of traumatic background where they lacked a masculine role model or a mother or both.
There's no doubt. I mean, I've met coaches in the PUA community, one English guy and two American guys, and they're not healthy, man. They're not comfortable inside their own skin. They're very, very agitated, hyper competitive, hyper vigilant.
Yep.
One of the guys just looked depressed. I was like, this dude's like, his priorities are all wrong. Like he needs to get help. He's really sad.
Those are the coaches. You should see the business managers behind the scenes. It gets even worse. Yeah, the PUA community, I have a long history of being involved with it, but I'll tell you right now, it attracts some fucked up people. Knock on wood. But yeah, I've met a lot of crazy motherfuckers in that community.
It makes sense because what it is on the face of it is like it's self-selected for people who are coming from a state of lack and people who are coming from a state of wantingness and feeling left out and feeling hard done by. So it's kind of inevitable that it will be that in some sense. But to your point of trauma, the fact that you can realize you've had a traumatic childhood is very useful and stands you in good stead. To know that so young as well is great because it means you'll be able to protect yourself from certain situations, which is fantastic. We want that. And you'll also be able to forgive yourself for certain things. There are certain things you won't want to do. There are certain things that are going to make you uncomfortable, certain things that will exhaust you. And you won't hate yourself for it. You'll go, well, my childhood wasn't perfect. There were things I needed I wasn't given. That hurt. And yeah, a lot of guys are going to have that. A lot of people have that. The term childhood trauma puts people off. My brother-in-law is American, and he was like, you need to call it something else. And I was like, what should I call it? And he said, just call it a normal level of fucked up. And I'm like, that's the title of my book. I'll call it a normal level of fucked up.
Well, because it feels like everyone wants to be healthy, and to some degree that's like healthy narcissism. It's like, yeah, of course, well, not everyone, but it seems like a lot of people want to be healthy. So who the hell wants to identify with, I actually have real childhood trauma? Like who the fuck wants to go out and say that? I'll say that, but I don't think I'm normal. So
I think if there's obviously something that's either happened for you or working for you philosophically, where you've made somewhere along the line a conscious decision to be rigorous with self-honesty.
yeah.
I don't know if that was an explicit experience or it's just something that you've picked up, maybe modeled from people that that had as heroes.
Yeah, it's a combination of things. I would say there was a moment where it was this was sort of explicit. It was an explicit moment that was in this direction. And it's when
Mm-hmm.
it was right about the time I found the pickup community. It was the first, I was 16 or 17. I was right about about that age, about a year before I started this company.
Mm-hmm.
And it occurred to me for the first time in my life that I could, and sounds so dumb, later on, but at that age, it was like profound that I could go on the internet, I could find information, and if it was useful and like real, basically if it was true, I could use it, apply it to my life and myself, and then my life would get better.
Mm-hmm.
This simplistic math problem of like find the information, add it into my head, and then use it, and if it was right, my life's going to get better. That fucking clicked for me at that young age, and I've never stopped since then. And then that led to things like being honest with myself, or when I'm bullshitting myself, trying to figure out when that is.
Well, the perspective that you've got is the correct one, and it's one that we explicitly teach. I have my coaches explicitly teach to clients, which is you're safer not bullshitting yourself. You're safer if you're honest with yourself. And it was one of Patrice O'Neal's things: honesty. Just tell the truth. At the very least, tell yourself the truth.
Yeah.
But as much as you can in the world, as long as it doesn't get you killed, tell the truth. Just be honest. And that will give you, I mean, you're going to save yourself a lot of money in potential therapy and coaching. You personally, there's so much you won't need to do. There are many sessions, because sometimes we have to fight the client for 3 to 4 hours trying to wade through their bullshit to get to, okay, this is actually, you're sad, dude. You're really sad. And that, no, I'm fine. It's like, no, you're not fucking fine. People who are fine don't talk this way. They don't act this way. And then they'll eventually go, okay, I am a bit sad. Well, good. Now we've got there, but you won't need that. So it's really helpful. That's one of the things I would say to the guys watching, like, if you're going to, like, a lot of good psychology actually is good philosophy applied. A good philosophical stance to have and a good belief to hold is you're always safer telling yourself the truth, unadulterated, unedited, just as it really is. If you're going to be honest, at least be honest with yourself.
Yeah, I'll say this too. I don't know if you're familiar with Objectivism, the philosophy of Objectivism from Ayn Rand, but I found that when I was about 20, 21. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's something that explicitly focuses on rationality, that the good in life comes from siding with reality, essentially, reason and reality, and focusing on reality, including especially with yourself. So I found that too at a fairly young age, and that's guided my life tremendously since then. And I even mentioned in the speech, that's actually one of the things that I think, for the most part, it helped protect me from someone who tried to hurt me. Obviously not a flawless job, but I think it was very useful as a tool. And it kept me from sacrificing myself, which she was very much... there was actually a point at the end of that relationship where she said, you never sacrificed anything for me. And I just looked at her deadpan. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Exactly like I told you I was not going to do. What did you think I was going to do? Like, and it made her fucking infuriate her. Like, she was absolutely like beet red. And I wasn't even trying to be combative. It was like, what the hell did you think I was going to do? Like, because of objectivism, because of the philosophy.
They don't like hearing the word no. And they certainly don't like, they don't like any philosophical shift that moves you towards an objective or individualistic point of view, because it ruins the codependence. And I actually had a very, very similar conversation towards the end of my last relationship that came out of, a conversation that I'd had with somebody, the conclusion of which led me to a much more objective point of view. And when she heard about that conversation, she flew into a rage. And you saying about your ex going red, she did the same thing, like a purplish red color, tiny, beautiful little girl, fucking berserk, like a Viking Norse warrior berserk. And I was looking at her. She stood over me screaming because I'd had a conversation in which we were talking about, choosing who your friends are and making good decisions about who you have relationships with. And that sent her into a hysterical rage where I thought she was going to pick up a wine glass and stick me with it. I was actually sat there going,
Richard, that sounds like sexism, calling a woman hysterical.
Totally, her hysteria was running all the way around her body at that moment in time.
There's actually a speaker I think you'll like a lot. We have Rollo Tomasi. He's a good friend. He has a blog called The Rational Male, and one of the things he coined is similar to objectivist ethics, rational egoism. Essentially, he calls it MPOO, short for mental point of origin. And he uses it in some ways as it's something that's very attractive to women, I think, across the board. When a man puts himself first and takes care of himself and focuses on himself. But that's kind of what it reminded me of what you were talking about a minute ago. An individualist perspective like that.
So I'm not as familiar with the whole you called it the manosphere before. I'm not as familiar as I should be, and it might be to some advantage because then I won't have my thinking in that space. So as an outsider, from a psychological point of view, is it a man is attractive if he's putting himself first? And I go, yeah, because the inverse would be untrue. A man would be very unattractive if he's being super submissive, if he's supplicating, if he goes, oh, I really like you, so therefore I'm going to give you everything.
It's a codependency, essentially, right?
It is codependency, and it's something that, it's something that men do a lot, or I've seen in clients, I've seen in my friends doing it a lot. It's almost like an instinct to. If you like a girl a lot, like the more you like her, the more you just fucking give everything away. Yeah. It's like, why? Is that genetic? Is that cultural? What the fuck? It's definitely a thing. But if you step out of yourself and put yourself in the other person's shoes, which is what empathy is, which is what compassion is. If I'm an attractive girl with lots of options and I meet a gentleman and he's so blown away by me that he's just going to do whatever I want and going to give everything away. It's kind of communicating. I don't know.
Low value.
I'm sat here being a girl and I'm going, that's just not sexy. It's not hot. I don't like it. It's low value. It kind of suggests that he doesn't have options, that he's not.
Yep.
I don't know. There's something very unmasculine about it, but it is an instinct. It's definitely this thing that men have a tendency to do, which is like just give everything away. I don't know. I don't have an explanation for why we're doing it, but you saying he teaches that, Rollo teaches that as a way of being more attractive. That makes 100% sense to me. Total sense.
That's not the total purpose of it, but yeah, it's something that he does discuss as is very attractive. I believe it too, based on my own personal experience and other things I've read and studied over the years. Yep. Yeah, it's. I think you have a really good time getting to know the speakers and being a part of what we do, man. It's the event's fucking awesome. Like it's gonna blow you away. Like totally confident it's gonna. I'll just let it speak for itself when you experience it, but it's gonna seriously exceed, I think, every expectation.
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to meeting the guys there and to hear what people are talking about, to hear what their concerns are, and be a part of that conversation and try and contribute something that's something of value.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, guys, for those of you watching, if you want to ask a question on the YouTube chat, I do have it open. I'm starting looking through it for some questions. If you guys have any for Richard, I'm going to type that as well for you guys. We've got a lot of chat. It's just I don't know what the hell these guys are saying. There's a couple hundred messages, looks like.
When I run these lives, it's usually people just start chatting to each other. They're just.
I think sometimes, in this case, I was focusing a lot more on you than the audience. So I'm not even sure if they realize I was even looking at it, but I do have it open. We can take a look at it. But.
Is there a forum for the 21 convention I could jump on maybe and speak to some of the guys before I come over?
Yeah, we have a Facebook group. It's got about 500 people in it. It's called Becoming the Ideal Man. I'll send you an invite on Facebook. Yeah, that'd
be very cool. Thank you.
The Red Pill is a subreddit as well. You can take a look at, but it's. I don't own that. I don't run it. We're just and a lot of the guys that do. That's the whole thing. You can take a look at. It's gonna be a lot of fun. A lot of fun looking at that one.
Could you briefly tell me what Red Pill is?
Yeah. I mean, so the red pill, it comes from the movie The Matrix, obviously. That was like
Mm-hmm.
his first use that I'm aware of. And then the red pill community that I'm talking about is the original post-Matrix, movie and trilogy, internet use of the concept. So obviously today, everything's a red pill. It's like my religion's red pill, like my political ideology's red pill. This philosophy for, this is the red pill of like fucking martial arts or whatever. That's not what this is. This is actually very specific to the manosphere.
Right.
I would further say that it's an evolution on the pickup community. I think a lot of guys in the late 2000s in the pickup community saw it becoming more feminized and kind of like dumbed down.
Right.
So and masculinity was kind of taking a back seat. And so I think the red pill grew out of that in a large sense. And it's a more masculine version of the red pill, of the pickup community, with a focus on men and masculinity rather than just picking up chicks.
Right.
So it's broader and deeper.
Well, that's interesting. That's it. I did wonder when I was looking at the last time I properly looked at the pickup community. I was still living in Malaysia. It was about 5 years ago, and that was what I walked away from it feeling like. There is an awful lot of focus on women. It's men focusing on women, and I was like, I wonder what it would be like if men actually focused on being better men. Well, what that would be like. So it sounds like it's that kind of. Yeah.
I'd say too, though, you probably heard of like MGTOW. It's kind of like that, except generally the consensus in the red pill is that women are still worth interacting with. So a lot of MGTOWs and red pillars will share a lot of the same values and beliefs, but we make different conclusions dramatically.
Okay.
MGTOWs in some ways will literally just fuck off and literally avoid women as much as they can. In the red pill, that's not the case. Like the options of what you're going to do are going to differ, but we still interact with women.
How do MGTOWs live without women though? How's that?
I mean, some of them literally have sex dolls, to be honest. Like there was a whole thing recently on I don't even want to get into that too much, but it caught the Red Man group by surprise. It was a whole fucking shit. It was a whole thing, man. It was wild. I wasn't on that episode. I got to hear about it like right after. I was like, what in the fuck happened there? Because nobody on the show knew when he came on that this guy was super into sex dolls, and so it hit the people live on a Google Hangout. Like this guy had married one, and they're just like, "What the fuck?" Like, yeah.
No. The first few times I heard about MGTOW, I was like, "You don't mean literally go your own way?" And they were like, "Yes, literally." And I was like, "So do you turn gay, or like, what do you?"
I think they have levels too. So some of them still, I think, pick up women or they bang escorts or what. I mean, it's each guy's going to make his own path, and it's the MGTOW community too is very decentralized. Even more so than the red pill. Like I don't know of a single big physical face, personality that's associated with MGTOW. Not one.
Okay.
It's no one wants to be like publicly associated with it. Unlike the pickup community, which has famous characters like Neil Strauss and Eric, Mystery, and even the red pill now has people like Roosh and Rollo Tomasi.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's very background. I should mention too, though, the red pill, though they would call it the truth about. Basically what men and women and how we interact. So the truth about sexual strategy and how men and women interact overall, as opposed to the blue pill, which would be like the Disney Fantasyland stuff, where you just go out and find your soulmate. Everything's going to be fine. Women are angels. They can do no wrong, and vice versa for the women.
That sounds healthy to me. I think like if people want a chance at a long-term relationship or even marriage that isn't going to end the way most of them do, they should do that whole red pill thing. Men and women should go through and just tell the truth. Just be honest. Like, this is what other people do. These are the games other people play. Let's fucking not do that. Let's definitely just try not to do that. Just acknowledge that there are games that are being played, acknowledge the manipulations, and then try and avoid them.
Yep. I can say too that since finding the red pill about 2 years ago, almost exactly, that my success with women has gone like way up. My ability to interact and communicate. And I haven't spun that into a relationship and family or anything like that as of yet. But I feel a lot more confident around women because I actually, before that, I did pretty well, even before Medusa and all that, just by studying pickup and seduction. But I never got the fundamentals of why those things worked, which is what the red pill really focuses on for men in that context. Like, why do women respond to certain communications and behaviors?
Yeah.
Or not, and they hate it. Like when a guy, like you were talking about, dumps everything out immediately. It's like, well, put yourself in her shoes. Do you really want that? From a hot chick, you might, but
Yeah, yeah, I suppose so. I suppose it is context specific. It is. It's a useful exercise. When I've been talking to guys, especially younger guys, I will always say to them, when it comes to like what's attractive in a man, just think as a guy about what you would think is cool in a guy. Like if you think that that behavior would be admirable, that's a cool person that you'd want to hang around with, that might give you at least the beginning of some coordinates to understand what's going on inside of a girl's head.
The female mind. We have some questions. This one's a bit political, but figured I'd ask
Let's
it.
do it.
So from Kung Fu Joe,
Come on, Kung Fu Joe.
What do you think about the state of the UK and free speech? I think he was mentioning Tommy Robinson earlier too, and all that. I don't know if you have thoughts on that or get into that.
Yeah, well, it's dreadful. I mean, it's dreadful everywhere. It's. I think people are very aware of it now, and one of the little problems I have with the Jordan Peterson thing, it's not a problem I have with what he's saying. I find it frustrating. It's presented as though it's new. This is not new. Everything that Jordan Peterson is talking about. Obviously, you know the author Robert Anton Wilson.
No, I don't.
He's a he wrote a bunch of he's like comical but psychological and philosophical books. But he actually wrote a serious book in the early 90s called The New Inquisition, where he was talking about exactly this. He, I think, was on the left, but he was complaining about the tendency for regressive, we didn't have the term social justice warrior back then, I don't think, radical leftists becoming a new inquisition, burning books, banning scientific research, just banning it. And he was like, we can't have this. So no, it's dreadful. The state of free speech in the UK is dreadful, but it has been for a very long time. I mean, the idea you can't, like, politicians don't tell the truth, and they don't tell the truth because they're as frightened as anybody else would be of being rubber stamped. What's the worst thing you can be rubber stamped with now? Racist, transphobe, homophobe, and people are terrified.
The oppression Olympics, they call it, I think.
What's it called?
The oppression Olympics. It's like and that then would lead to, what's the most useful way to slander somebody, essentially.
I like that, the oppression Olympics. But it, and in my view, like if you're running a country, and I think Theresa May has fallen foul of this. Angela Merkel definitely has. That they're cowards, because they obviously you've got to listen to public opinion, but you can't be swayed like some sort of flower in the wind by whichever way it goes. You've got to stand by your principles, and they're very cowardly. They're way too cowardly for me. So yeah, the state of freedom of speech in the UK is dreadful, but it has been for a long time.
Cool. I'll keep an eye out for questions here.
Yeah.
I have one. I mean, what would you say right off the bat to any guy who just, exited a toxic relationship, a young man, within the past 6 months? Like, where should he go other than like, hey, let's stay coaching with Spartan Coaching? Yeah. What kind of basic directions would he need to head? Or what would you have told me when I was, about to give that speech? I was a few months out of that relationship.
I mean, most likely, I probably would have actually said what you just told me not to do, which is say go and speak to a Spartan life coach, because I can't say go to the online narcissism community. Unfortunately, you should be able to connect with people online, get decent advice from people who are educated in the subject. But the online narcissism community is completely infused with covert narcissists and inverted narcissists who spread misinformation and garbage. It's mainly powered by women who are very, very comfortable. Some, but not all. That's another Robert Anton Wilson term. Some but not all. Who are very, very comfy with the hyper-normalized idea of spreading explicitly or implicitly the idea that all narcissists and psychopaths are men. And if anybody wants to run the experiment, it's being done right now by men on Instagram, put up memes and pictures that talk about female narcissistic abuse of men, you'll be faced with a torrent of comments saying, well, what about what men do to women? It's like, dude, when you put up one that says sometimes men abuse women, you don't get a load of men going, well, what about what? Sometimes women do it to men. Sometimes men do it to women. Why are you trying so fucking hard to control the narrative? Let people tell the truth. Let them speak.
I've gotten a ton of this through email ever since that speech, man. Like, it's so many comments, all kinds of crazy shit. I mean, positive stories, people telling me how the speech helped them. I've got a lot of that. I mean, very probably similar to the kind of stories you get, I'd imagine, but a lower frequency. But also people that got super angry with me, that how dare I shame her in public like that or tell the truth.
People or women?
I think men and women both. I would say it's not just one or the other. It's both. Yeah, they'll come at it from different angles. You'll see them come at it but I mean, I've had men flat out tell me I should have stayed married to her. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like,
really?
Someone, oh yeah, dude. And they're not even. Do you think they're just trolling or something? Like, is this guy just crazy? Is he just trolling? Like, no, this guy actually believes I should have stayed and like worked that out. Like, that's how. And now that's, of course, you're gonna have some percentage of the population that thinks that way, but to see it written well, better than most YouTube comments, like with grammar and stuff, it's like, I can't believe people actually. It's hard to believe functioning adults think that way.
I think if somebody, I can't defend that point of view because it's completely self-destructively stupid to hold it for your own life, but to invite it on somebody else's is just, childish, absolutely absurd behavior.
And shame, they'll shame me for it too. Like, how dare you attack a woman in public like this? Her family was like that too, of course. Like, zero appreciation, respect, or interest in what was really like. I'm not perfect, I fucked up too, plenty of ways, but the level of narcissistic abuse, it was super toxic and I mean, hurtful and just gross.
I wonder, like, if she'd stabbed you and then you went on and said, "This is the story of how my wife stabbed me." I wonder if they would have the same problem. I mean,
I think so, to be honest. Like, they would still find people. I mean, in that explicit of a case, who knows? But it's like people will find women are this protected class, and when they commit various forms of abuse, overt or covert or whatever, people make up excuses at the to the end of the time. It's horrible.
I should say, and I hope that this brings maybe hope to some of the guys listening. There is a very large, very vocal group of women who follow my work who are very, very against that kind of thing, of having women as a protected class, of having a double standard. Yep. Their attitude is the same as mine. Abuse is abuse. Narcissism knows no gender, ethnic, age boundaries. Yep. If somebody's being abusive to another human being, you call it out. You don't bring identity politics into it. Yep. There are plenty of women who say it for the bullshit it is. Often it's because they have sons, they have male children, and they're like, what kind of a world are my sons going to grow up into? Are they going to be made to feel ashamed for being men as well? Yep. They're not happy about it, and nor should they be.
Yeah, I've met some women like this. I've seen comments like this, and I've met some in person even. I've had mothers thank me for doing that talk and things like it that I've done.
That's good. Yeah. That's really good. It's really good. It's a strange period that we're going through. I guess it's the backswing of the pendulum in terms of the power dynamic. But my God, it swung too far, way too far. Standing up for women, great. Attacking men for being men, what the fuck? That's got nothing to do with standing up for women.
Or saying no to abuse. So this kind of behavior is absolutely not okay on every level.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a shame. And I can see the irritation, frustration, and despair sometimes in Jordan Peterson when you're being faced with that kind of mentality that is furious with you just for saying no, that is furious with you just for you exercising your right to personally say no, because you can choose whatever boundary you want. You personally, you're not enforcing it on me. It's got nothing to do with me. But these people have this mindset where it's like, no, you're not allowed to say no to that. You have to like what we tell you to like. You have to think it's okay what we tell you is okay to think. It's like, well, what? Did I miss a fucking meeting? I didn't sign up for that. I didn't consent to that.
Yep. Cool.
Boundary breaking motherfuckers.
Let's see. We have another question. It looks like from a woman, Sonia, maybe a woman, I don't know. Sonia XOX. How to stop So the question's kind of formed oddly, but it seems to make sense. How to stop copious disassociation? Tips for how to get to the other side of healing. She feels stagnant or stuck.
Yeah.
Which I imagine that's going to be a lot of people feel like this.
A lot of people do, and that's why the question is written poorly, because she's a dissociator. So probably what you have, Sonia, is a freeze response to trauma, and that's causing you to dissociate. This would have been a useful strategy when you were a kid growing up in the environment that you were growing up in, was to disappear into your imagination and to pull out of a reality that was too painful for you, where you couldn't fight back, you couldn't run away, and you couldn't negotiate your way out of it. So you've learned to dissociate. And it was a good strategy back then, but it's not helping you now. It's an emotional flashback. So you need to reduce the emotional dysregulation that you're experiencing. I have a free course that teaches you how to do exactly that. If you sign up to the email list on SpartanLifeCoach.com, there is a manual, an audio, and a video file that teaches you a technique that inside of 2 weeks or so, if you use it every day, it'll bring your emotional flashbacks right down, and you'll feel more emotionally regulated. The more emotionally regulated you are, the less you will use dissociation as a means of coping with stress. But it does take time, especially if this has been a lifelong coping mechanism for you. It will take time for you to come back to yourself.
Yeah, I actually have a question too. What do you think about the, I don't know exactly how to describe it, I'll do my best. When men get out of a relationship, like I did, and you did, and many others have, especially out of a toxic one, any kind of commentary on what happened is instantly shot down as like, you're just bitching, it's victim puking, blah, 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 blah. Shut up and, man the fuck up and move on. And a lot of that's probably well-intentioned, but at the end of the day, it doesn't help as far as I've understood it and experienced it.
I don't know how being a fucking asshole can be well-intentioned. You wouldn't do it, mate. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it. And if somebody came to you and said, they hurt me, under any context, your response would not be, oh, stop bitching, shut up, that didn't happen.
It definitely not be that,
no. See, because you have at least, I don't know you very well, but I know that you at least have the ability to go, okay, this human being is telling me what their reality is. I don't know what their fucking reality is. Let's at least listen. Yep. You would at least listen. And it's morally wrong when people do this to other human beings. It's not okay to say to somebody, oh, that didn't happen. You're just bitching. Harden the fuck up and get on with it. But all of that, it's dreadful. It's a really brutal, like negating somebody's reality, negating their emotional experience is not okay. That's not kind. It's the kind of thing that
that would almost fall under narcissistic abuse, wouldn't it?
It is.
Totally
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
I call it, what was the term I made up for it? So your primary gaslighting comes from the abuser, and then you have secondary gaslighting, which is where your family and friends tell you it didn't happen, which is exactly what the narcissist wants.
Oh, that's Matt. Yeah, I had that. I had close friends for years, over a decade, who were skeptical that she was actually a prostitute. I'm like, do you think I'm just fucking like making this up? Like, this is crazy. Like, I understand. I understand I'm in a traumatic experience here, but like, I'm telling you very simple facts of what happened, and people would just ignore you. It's amazing.
Well, so there's something there that I should come back to. There is just to finish that point, the tertiary gaslighting, which is when you actually go to a therapist or a coach and then they negate it. So to come back to your earlier question, would I have told you to go and get therapy? I'd have been like, be careful with the online communities, but there is help there. And yes, you should get therapy or coaching, but my God, you've got to be careful who you get it with. Because some therapists will just turn around and tell you narcissistic personality disorder doesn't exist, or you weren't really facing narcissistic abuse. Now, this problem of people saying she wasn't a prostitute, when I worked in the security industry for years, and I was involved with all kinds of silly things in Liverpool, in Tenerife, and then I worked in New Zealand. And I tell people stories from that time, and I know when I'm telling them that they think I'm bullshitting. They're like, he's seen this in a film, and this is a bullshit story because nobody lives like this. And I got to the point where I realized I have to stop telling those stories unless you're talking to somebody who's lived in that life. Yeah. Because if I tell you something that's too far outside of your experience, nobody's going to believe it. Now, I didn't question for a second when you said she was a prostitute because, well, the rational brain goes, prostitutes exist. Some people must be prostitutes in the same way that assassins exist, gangsters exist, drug dealers exist.
Yep.
Some people have to do it, and they won't look like they do in the movies. We've probably all brushed past dreadful human beings at the supermarket as they were buying orange juice. You just don't know. So this then leads to a point, like, if you're going to tell stories about like criminal stuff, you can only talk to people who've lived in that life. And if
Yep.
you're going to talk about narcissistic abuse, please only speak to other victims of narcissistic abuse, because it will drive you fucking crazy if
Yep.
you talk to somebody and they don't believe you, and it will ruin your friendships. It will break that trust. It will break that rapport, because you'll be like, oh, I thought this guy knew me. I thought he trusted me. I thought he was my friend, or she was my friend, and now I'm being told I'm not to be believed, or that I'm full of shit, or I'm crazy.
It's like it feels sometimes. So let me know what you think about this. It feels like you're trying to relate an experience that they have no reference point for,
Yeah,
and they
like an
literally,
alien
it's like,
abduction.
yeah, like alien abduction, or it's just a foreign language. Like they don't. There's no emotional content for them to be like, oh yeah, I went through that too. It's fucking bananas. Like what
Well,
happened?
I mean, if they were raised in a healthy environment with two parents who love them, and then you start going, well,
We call it two-parent privilege. We call it two-parent privilege.
I
Yeah.
like that. That's really cool. Yeah, two parent. If they have two parent privilege, and you start going, well, my dad stole money from me. My mother hates me, and she competes with me because I look like my dad. They'll be like, what the fuck are you? That doesn't exist.
Yep.
That's not a thing. That's not even. What are you talking? This is like.
And they have no idea. I've seen a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
no idea. And then you can't. One of the things that we base trusting relationships on is being able to tell each other things. And
Mhm.
then you can't go there with them, but it matters to you. It's part of your reality, but it's not part of theirs. Now, if they were philosophically humble and philosophically objective, they could cope with that, and they go, okay, just because I didn't experience it doesn't mean the rest of the world operates from exactly the same points of reference I do. If they were open and humble, they would listen and go, wow, I never gone through anything like that, but that sounds like it sucked.
Yep.
Just that, that's all you need to hear. You don't need to be told, oh my God, I know exactly what you mean, but you do need to hear, okay, well, that sounds dreadful. I have no point of reference in my own life, but
Yep.
tell me more. I'm open to hearing it.
I've been through enough shit to be interested and respectful and to hear. That's what it feels like now at my age. I'm pushing 30, 29.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I was younger, it was harder to interact that way with people and socialize that way. But now it's like, yeah, like even if I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, I'm like, yeah, I've been through a lot of shit. Like, what happened?
Well, this is how we learn, isn't it? I mean, somebody tells you of an experience that you don't know about, rather than shut them down, listen, just encourage them to talk and go, wow, I don't know anything about that. Let's please tell me more, because I want to learn about parts of the world that I've got no experience of.
Yep. We had a question that was directed at me from Exaggerizi. ADJ, are you still on tomorrow? I've been planning my Saturdays around RMG. Yes, Redman Group is on tomorrow, episode 24, I believe. It'll be at 12 p.m. Eastern, right on this channel, and on Twitter as well, at Redman Group 21 and at 21 Convention. So tune in tomorrow for that. We should probably get you in there at some point, Richard. We have special guests on that. So we have like the Redman Group. We invite like Red Pill speakers on it. In your case, you'd be like a special guest, but you'd be, I think, a good fit at some point. I don't know about tomorrow, but we do it all the time.
Yeah. Awesome. I'd love to do it. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, actually, we're going to do episode 2 at some point of understanding dangerous personalities in women. We did episode 1 a few weeks ago. So you'd probably be a good guest on that one.
Awesome. Yeah. Lovely.
We call it episode 2, Crazy Bitches, essentially. No sexism, just totally episode 2, Crazy Bitches.
Guys can be crazy bitches too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the things I've noticed since exiting that relationship, for better and for worse, my ability to exhibit very abnormal behavior for a productive, non-malicious purpose is a lot higher. I guess because I was around crazy for so long, but women now, like the shit I'm able to do, it's a lot more intense than when I was younger. And women respond to it positively when it's done right.
I think if you're going to survive and heal, you won't be able to survive and heal without your behavioral flexibility being stretched.
Yeah.
that makes sense to me that you would have that neuroplasticity to adapt, because it's a horrendous experience. It really is torture. It really is fucking hell. Going
That
through
concept,
it.
though, that concept you just mentioned nails what, yeah, that absolute behavioral flexibility. That's what's increased a lot since the experience ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, damn.
It may have, and you may find that there was probably a level of emotional maturing, that it kind of punches into you. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. You learn so much about yourself in such a short space of time just through the fucking intensity of the crazy and the suffering. Because you know what crazy is, you know what sanity is.
Yep. What?
And most people don't. Most people have no idea of it. And now you value sanity as a virtue and as a pleasant experience. You'll be like, hey, I want to hang around with people who make me feel sane. Well, if you're kind of bored, you're privileged, led a good life, you're going to be thrill seeking. So it'd be like, sanity. Who the fuck cares about that? Show me something crazy. Let's be entertained. And then you actually get to a point you're like, nah, I can do without the entertainment. I'd just rather the sanity. Thank you.
It's the gladiator thing. Are you not entertained? I mean that to girls. I fuck with women all the time with that.
But
hey,
yeah,
we've been. Oh, go ahead.
Go on, sorry.
Oh, good.
I was just gonna say it gives you a hell of a perspective because it's so humbling. It's so humbling, and whatever happens, you're like, how bad could this really be? How bad could this really fucking be? It's like, you could get beaten up and you'd be like, God, that sucked. But I remember standing in the kitchen wondering whether I was going to have to go to jail for stabbing my ex-wife to death. And if you live through that and you come out the other side of it, and it gives you a perspective and it gives you humility, which is very healthy. Sorry, mate, what were you going to say?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, I was actually going to start kind of wrapping up the show. We've been going for well over an hour at this point. I think like an hour and a half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. We can stay on private though. I'll end the live stream in a bit. So everyone, thanks for watching the show live. Appreciate you tuning in to the special edition of 21 Live. Usually it's a whole group. We focused today on Richard Grannon, which I think is very well deserved. And I think everyone should go subscribe to his channel. The link is in the description of this video. I'll put a card up to top one of these areas in the video. And you can also go on YouTube and type Spartan Life Coach and it'll pull up his channel. He is almost 100,000. It was actually at 98,000. He's killing it. So yeah, 98,808 is what I'm seeing here. So subscribe to his channel and push him over 100,000. He will be in the 100K club. You will get your nice YouTube button from YouTube.
Is that what that is? Is that the 100K club?
Yep. You got a gold one at $1 million.
So. Help me out here. Some of you go subscribe. I want one of those things.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. I get to show it off to girls and they walk in, they're like, holy shit, what the fuck is that? I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. And you get a gold one at $1 million and you get a diamond encrusted gold one, I think, at 10 million.
Wow.
So we're gonna get there, man. Just another 10 years or less. Hey, well, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I think this will your project's going to really accelerate over the next few years. It's going to accelerate. It's going to explode. You're going to see an exponential growth. I would predict.
Thank you. I hope so. And fuck yeah. I mean, you're gonna be part of that now with the event. The event's fucking awesome, man. Like, I know I've said that, a couple times throughout the show, but it always blows everyone away. Everyone comes in with high expectations. They see the video. It's like, oh, it looks pretty good. And then they just walk out like fucking like a concert, like a total like rock concert. Like, holy fuck, it was amazing.
That's cool. So, that's cool. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yep. Yeah, so everyone go subscribe to his channel. Meet Richard live and myself in Orlando, Florida this October. We have about 30 tickets left at the21convention.org. That's .org, not .com. It's also linked to buy tickets underneath this video. You'll see it in the description, buy tickets. Everyone, thanks for tuning in live, and I'll see you tomorrow on the Red Man Group, episode 24. Peace. And Richard, thank you very much for being on here.
Thank you, mate. It's a pleasure.